Hello there, woman beings, and welcome to the Woman Being Podcast. I'm here today with the lovely Kelly and Kellyanne. Per usual, I'm Emma, and we are going to talk about Miss Kellyanne and her experience in getting married after dating a man for 4 years in the Christian community.
Whoa.
So, without further ado, let's dive right in. Welcome to the Woman Being Podcast community,
Where we explore thoughts and opinions
and have the freedom to change our minds.
without expectation or judgment.
We will hold a safe space and support each other.
As we navigate together in the form of feminine.
So, Kellyanne,
Emma.
as a Christian woman
Yeah.
As
In-
a Christian woman
in the world today,
in a world today,
where virgins
virgins
run to the altar,
run to the altar.
you made the radical decision of waiting 4 whopping years before consummating and entering into the marriage bed.
Correct. That is true.
Despite
4 whole years.
Yes. Despite the fact you knew you wanted to be married.
Mm-hmm.
You knew you were going to marry this man.
Mm-hmm.
And the people want to know, why'd you do it?
Why
did you do it?
Why would I do such a thing? I was in ministry school. I was young. Had moved out to California. Actually, we did a year of long distance. He was in Oklahoma and I was in California. It was rough. If you can do long distance, your relationship can make it through anything.
It's for real.
Any relationship, whether it be romantic, family, friends, anything. Because it just takes so much attention. But I knew in my bones it wasn't time. We were trying to set ourselves up well financially. We had a lot to work through personally, together and not together. And we just kind of followed our hearts and marched to the beat of our own drum.
4 years though, man. Like, I
Yeah.
feel like, well, at least in the current Christian climate, and this is what I did. So, the idea is once you know that this person is going to be the person you want to marry, you just get married as soon as possible to avoid the possibility of stumbling accidentally into the sexual bed before it is time.
Yeah. I mean, yeah, I knew I fought it for so long to not date him. We were best friends for a good chunk, like 8 months maybe, before I finally was like, okay, I'll date you. And I left that date knowing, okay, this is it. Like, I'm never dating anyone ever again.
Aww.
But yeah, we set up good boundaries. We knew ourselves as people, and by the grace of God, we made it.
It just seems like virgins are supposed to get married as quickly as possible in the Christian church.
Yeah.
But that's amazing that you guys had the patience and the knowingness to do what was right for you.
Yeah, it was just like, I mean, we kind of got asked the question all the time. It was like, so when are you getting married? Shouldn't you get married? Like, how are you managing your purity?
That's
like,
a good one. Yeah.
I hated that question because everyone thought it was their business. And especially in the Christian community, it's like, well, I'm just holding you accountable. And I'm like, well, sure, you're trying to hold me accountable, but you have no relational equity to actually, me, to actually be asking this personal of a question. But then the people closest to me were almost afraid to ask. So it was a really weird dynamic. But yeah, we did it.
Yeah, I feel like that an example of that is people are like, so when are you going to have kids? Or are you going to have kids? Or what do you think about having kids? Which, it's fine. I don't think it's like a bad question to ask.
Yeah.
But it often feels like it comes from people that you don't really even know at all.
Yeah.
And it's kind of like,
They're like, oh, you're still together? or, oh, you still don't have kids? Like, it's like the same thing. And it's very devalidating of both experiences of like, I'm obviously making this choice on purpose. Like, it's not like I'm enslaved to date him for, you know, it's like we just needed to work on our relationship. And
did you ever feel like there was like an undercurrent of like, why isn't he proposing to you yet?
Yeah,
like,
I imagine
does he not
people
want to
being
marry
like,
you,
yeah,
kind of thing?
like, oh, I'm sorry that he hasn't proposed yet.
Yeah,
like that type of
I
thing.
mean, there was some of that, yeah, but actually James would have gone to the courthouse to get married, like, in a heartbeat.
He was ready.
Like, he was ready. I knew I wasn't ready, and he was kind enough and patient enough to wait it out. And some of it, I also had unrealistic expectations of like, oh, well, I want the beautiful ring, and I want to buy a house, and I want to do all these things, and it's like, you don't need to do any of that, like, but also I think those materialistic things were just a reflection of the work I needed to do inside. And I was a mess. Like, I was 18 when we started dating. I'd moved to California. I'd never lived away from my parents, and I was literally just like learning how to be an adult. And somehow this amazing man walked into my life, and I got the opportunity to steward that while finishing growing up, and we got to finish growing up together. So it was special.
Yeah, that's good.
Yeah.
So besides just, you know, taking that time, taking your time and waiting to be committed in marriage, like, you also waited to have sex, right?
Yeah.
So like, weren't your loins burning with passion?
How did you manage your purity, Kelly?
Tell us now, all of us. How did you manage your purity after telling us you hated people asking you that?
Yeah, I mean, well, I was super lucky that I lived with housemates that really trusted me, and they weren't weird about a man being in the house. And we were, because of that trust, it actually helped me feel empowered. And so James would come over and we'd hang out, we'd watch movies in bed and close the door, and no one cared, and that was great. And I mean, at some level, yes, he was hot. And I wanted to jump that man's bones. But I also, like, you know, you kind of have that internal conviction, and you know when you've crossed the line. And as soon as we had this understanding that we talked through of like, okay, as soon as we feel that line, we're stopping whatever's happening. And that's the thing about a purity journey. It can change from day to day. Like, hey, today, actually, like, I feel great making out. Tomorrow, might not feel great making out. And, like, you have to really trust and know yourself. And we made it. We crossed the finish line. And also...
Two good Christian chillins.
No, but not to diminish that, though. That's really beautiful that you guys made that commitment to one another and that commitment to the Lord, and you did it together. Like, I think, at least on this podcast, we talk a lot about deconstructing all of the purity culture, things that sort of negatively influenced our views of sexuality. However, there is also beauty in you know, trusting the Lord in the process, committing to one another, and choosing that person as your only person under the covering of marriage. And I feel like I want to affirm that. That's very beautiful that you guys did that. And you did it together.
Thank you.
And what you have is your own.
Yeah. And God pushed me a little bit, because I was definitely that girl that was like, I'm not. So we got together, I moved, and we had never like kissed. And so, well, he tried to kiss me once, and I was like, oh my God, what are you doing? I turned my face, and he failed. It was so sad and hilarious. It was when we were just friends, too, like at the beginning of our friendship. He was like, and I was like, what are you doing? And he was like, I was just feeling the vibe. Were you not feeling the vibe? I was like, no.
Like, no vibe was felt.
What vibe?
So James struck out one time.
He struck out many times, actually.
Oh, no.
He wore me down. But I was like, let's just, like, be friends, because I'm, like, moving to ministry school and then gonna go to, like, the bush of Africa and be a missionary. And, like, I hate men. I had been hurt, and I, like, swore off men. Anyway, what was the question? Dang it.
how did you maintain your purity?
Oh, yep. So, long story short, we followed those internal boundaries, and it was great that we made it. And I was talking about how God pushed me. So one day in worship, I was thinking about going home for Christmas, because I was going home for Christmas, and God, I felt inside, was like, hey, you actually need to kiss James. And I was like, excuse me, God, I've made this beautiful, pure choice. Like, what are you talking about? I need to kiss James. I don't need anything. And he was like, actually, you do need to kiss him, because you are relying on yourself for your purity. You're being very controlling and manipulative with it, and you're actually robbing yourself of something. And I was like, I don't know what you're talking about. And so, but as the obedient, good Christian girl I was, we had our first kiss on Christmas. It was really cute.
That's cute.
And
First kiss Christmas.
Yeah.
You guys could be
That's
a
the
Hallmark
name of a Hallmark
movie.
movie for sure.
Yeah. And it was actually really, really great, because I didn't know how my mind-body connection was so turned off. And it actually started to kind of unfold. Like, for the first time, I understood what it's like to feel aroused and turned on. Like that, it just clicked for me. So for my journey, yes, I think it was very important to have that, and to have a little bit of a physical relationship pre-marriage, because if I had undone that all on a wedding night or honeymoon, I would have like had a meltdown, and it wouldn't have known.
Yeah, it'd be like whiplash.
It completely would have been whiplash.
Well, and that's kind of one of the things that the Lord impressed upon me after being married, because I was like you, the purity girl. And I was very proud of that.
I had the ring.
Yeah, I had the purity ring, and like we waited, and all of that. Again, I'm not devaluing the beauty of that decision that Ross and I made, but I had this sort of like self-righteous perception of self, and the Lord revealed to me like a year and some into marriage that my purity had actually come from him. That through Christ's blood on the cross, I was washed clean and made pure, not through any doing of my own. And he reminded me of that scripture that like your righteousness is like, or the righteousness of man is like filthy rags, is that on our own, regardless of our intentions or our heart, like what we produce is actually not up to snuff.
Yes.
Whether we're even in obedience and in dedication to God and whatever, it's not enough. And if it was enough, there's no reason that Christ had to come and die. So we were insufficient, and because of that, he came and died for our sins and washed us clean. So regardless of whether you've waited or didn't wait, or, you know, have slipped up here and there, whatever, we're sexually assaulted, like your purity is a gift from God. And that was probably one of the first things that the Lord did in my life in starting to deconstruct this sort of purity mindset that I'd built up, and humbling I was very humbled by that, because I was like, like I had been sort of wearing it like a badge of honor. Like,
yes, same.
We did this thing and we're great, you know. But
totally.
But ultimately, like, it points back to the fact that Christ actually did this thing that was great, and because of him, I can walk in purity in my marriage.
Yeah.
So, sorry, a little TED talk.
It was a good TED talk.
Actually, sort of to rewind a little bit back to some of the things that you said, and in the ways that you guys sort of had this mutual trust and sort of openness, I think is something that you don't see in a lot of sort of purity culture, quote unquote, like relationships. And I think that some of the harm in that, which I think we might have touched on in our abstinence abuse episode, but
plug,
check it out, is that like when this thing becomes so forbidden and so like built up as this taboo thing, then once a guy and a girl get alone together, I feel like it sort of feels like a free-for-all, because it's like, oh, we're finally out of like the watchful eye
Yeah.
of our parents or our pastor or whatever, and it turns it into this very sort of intense on and off thing
Yes.
in your physical relationship with somebody. And so I think that the fact that you guys were treating this as like a way of trusting one another, and the fact that you guys like were in an environment like with your roommates where it was trusting of you guys, where it was like, yeah, you like, you know, do whatever you want.
Yeah.
Like we don't have like a no boys in the room policy in our house or things like that, which is things that people do have. And so I think that's
like fine.
Which is fine.
You know,
Yeah, it
if
just
that's what
depends on-
you're comfortable with,
Yeah.
that's fine.
yeah.
But I mean, for me, it was a gift because I spent my whole life feeling like I wasn't trusted. And so now that it was like, oh, I'm an adult and I'm not an animal, I can control myself, and we have open communication about this. It was a huge gift.
That reminds me too of, I remember listening to a podcast and they brought up the fact that in Genesis, Eve is in the garden and the serpent approaches her and he's kind of like, what did God really say about the fruit of the tree? And Eve says, God said, we cannot eat of it or touch it lest we die. But if you go back a couple verses, that's not actually what God says. God had said, do not eat of the fruit lest you die. And she had added her own addition to his word saying, don't touch it. And I think that's very prevalent in the Christian church when it comes to how we handle sin, is that we're like, okay, God said don't eat the fruit. So you know what? I think maybe we just don't even touch the fruit. And actually, let's not get near the tree. Let's, you know what? We're going to build a fence around the tree. And actually, maybe you better just like get out of this portion of the garden and just stay as far away from it as you possibly can. And I think it's important for an individual to have the ability to set boundaries for themselves when it comes to how close or far you can be to the tree, quote unquote, without, you know, being tempted or feeling like overwhelmed with compulsion to step outside of what you feel that you want to do.
Yeah.
However, when the church itself comes in and like builds that fence and stops allowing people to like get in, you've actually extrapolated on the word of God, and it's no longer the word of God, and you've removed people's personal freedom in obeying the Lord. And that's religion.
No, absolutely. And I mean, part of me was like almost terrified, because it's like, I am a good Christian girl. I'm following the rules. I'm a 1 on the Enneagram. So the worst possible thing is for you to think that I have moral corruption. And, you know, there's so much shame around it. And people constantly ask, well, like, are you bumping the fence? Like, you might be on the right side of the fence, but are you bumping it? And like, you know, dumb things like that.
Why are you even looking at that tree? Like,
Exactly.
Why have you even set your gaze upon it?
And it's like, no one's asking, like, how is your relationship? Is it healthy?
Yeah.
Do you feel safe?
Yeah.
How's your emotional world? How's your heart? Like, it's literally just about the physicality of the relationship, when honestly, like, sure, you could have a very physical relationship, but you could still have a good conscience, or like, you know, a healthy relationship, or a really unhealthy relationship with no physicality at all. Like, there's and I think that's the thing about relationships and people, like, while you're pastoring people or you're in relationships, like, everyone is genuinely so different. And that is, I think, what, like, my story kind of shows. It's like, what was right for me could be completely wrong for someone else. And like, that's okay, because we all have our own journey, and we all get to listen to the Holy Spirit, and we all get to follow our own path.
So what advantages did you find then in taking that 4 years to wait, both on the physical level and just sort of the relational marriage level, and what were you able to cultivate pre-marriage in that amount of time that you wouldn't have been able to do within marriage?
Yeah. Well, I mean, in our relationship, I'll say that, we knew each other very well. I mean, we were best friends that fell in love, and we got to continue to build that foundation of best friendship. And I walked into no surprises. And James walked into no surprises. We knew exactly what we were getting ourselves into. We knew the good, the bad, the ugly. And that was very reassuring. It's like, I'm not going to marry someone and be like, who are you? I don't know. Which was a fear of mine. On the personal level, with the physical side, I actually got to find my home in my own body and really cultivate that intimacy of like being aware of like my body and what's happening and what's going on, which again, if that had happened earlier in like if I'd gotten married earlier, that kind of would have been a whole mess. And for myself, I got to finish really growing up and be independent and you know, not just for me go into a relationship that could have been codependent or more codependent, because I think we all have codependency tendencies, but it could have been a mess, and it was not a mess.
Yeah.
So I think it was kind of twofold.
Yeah. Do you think that, or in what ways do you think that your marriage would be different if you guys hadn't waited to get married?
Oh, I mean, yeah, there would have been a lot more to work through. We would definitely both be in counseling. But I mean, I think it still would have worked out. You know, it just might have been a little bit bumpier, and like that's okay. I'm not opposed to bumpy. We have had our own bumps.
Yeah.
But yeah, it wouldn't quite have been time.
So then, as you were going into marriage, what were you expecting? You know, like you knew this person so well, and you had taken the time. Like you're like, okay, we're gonna slow down. We're gonna make sure we are doing this in the right way for us, and that we are ready for this. So what did you expect going to that? And then like, what were things that didn't match those expectations as you went into marriage?
I mean, I think one of the biggest things was I anticipated, well, maybe I didn't consciously anticipate this, but subconsciously thought there was going to be a huge shift. Like, you have this amazing day, you go on your honeymoon, you have sex, you go to sleep, you wake up the next day, and the person sleeping next to you is still the same person, and you're still the same person. Like, there's not this cosmic shift. The stars are not wildly aligned. It feels the same. And I think that's what I did not anticipate at all. I don't know that I actively thought it was going to look any particular way, but I think I expected something to be different. But you genuinely feel the same. It's like, oh, I still feel like a kid trying to do the best they know how. And I still have the same feelings for this person. We don't feel like we don't have the same thoughts now. There's no superpower that comes with sex.
I thought that was part of it. You can then read their mind.
Sometimes.
If you're lucky.
If you're lucky.
If you've been touched by a special angel. Yeah.
The sex angel.
Yeah.
The sex angel that makes
the sex telepathy
you know,
angel.
Yeah.
Yes.
Telepathically connected.
Course.
But yeah, and I think that was also reassuring, because it's like, oh, this is the person I know. I'm the person I know. We've cultivated this together, and now we just get to live together and have fun all the time. Like, I describe my first few years of marriage. I mean, we've been married 3.5 years. It still kind of feels like this, but like, it's kind of like a sleepover with your best friend that you've been looking forward to for a long time, and it never has to end. That sleepover just keeps going. For myself, I had the expectation that I was going to be the good, perfect wife that takes care of the husband and, you know, has dinner ready and keeps the house clean, and because that's what had been modeled in my life, with not just, you know, kind of that expectation with my own parents, but with everyone else. But like the wife constantly is stressed out and tired, and the house is never clean the way she wants it to be, and the kids are always crazy, and like, but I had this like picturesque idea in my brain and in my mind, and we got married, and I had a very serious decline with my mental health, and had I describe it as a breakdown. I had my anxiety that I had had my whole life just finally manifested because I felt so safe. Yes, I had been in fight, flight, or freeze my entire life, and my sweet body and brain was finally just like, oh, you're finally safe. You can process all this crap and let it all out. And I didn't know what to do. It was crazy, and I felt like I was drowning. It felt like a shell of a person, and the roles were flipped. James took care of me. James made sure dinner happened. He did the laundry. He cleaned the house and did the dishes, all while working at night and then trying to take care of his sweet wife, who's just a 22-something, that doesn't know how to take care of her mental health. Mm-hmm. And so it was very humbling. And, I mean, man, trust, like nothing kicks in like trust when you literally don't know if you can take care of yourself. Mm. And this person just steps up and chooses to love you and take care of you regardless. Mm. Like, he is truly just like an angel.
Mm. Why do you think that he was able to do that?
It's a great question. I don't know.
You have to ask him.
You'd have to ask him. I mean, he kind of, and part of this like actually breaks my heart, but his dad left when he was young. He was the oldest of three boys, and his mom was single most of his life, and he just became the man of the household. So part of it is like, oh, he's done this. He knows how to get through things like this. But it also breaks my heart because I'm like, oh, I don't want to be that burden. And it was like a pride thing. Like, I want to be the one that finally takes care of you. But little did I know I needed to be taken care of. Mm-hmm. And to kind of break that down.
So can you tell us a little bit more about like what that first year was really like for you and for him? And like, how did your relationship have opportunities to grow in the midst of all of that? Yeah,
I mean, well, for me, it was probably about 3 months in. 3 months in, and it just, for me, it started with little things. It started with, I don't know how to pick out what to wear. Or like, I can't sleep. Or I'm scared for James to leave the house because I don't know if he's going to come back. Like, and so slowly this anxiety kind of just bubbled up, and I tried to press it down and just hold it together and keep it far away. But for anyone who struggles with any kind of emotional anxiety, depression, what you push down has to eventually come out. And if you don't let it out, it will come out on its own somehow, some way. And so I was like a shell of a person. I was like barely functioning. And James stepped in and just held me, and like emotionally, physically, all the things, and just was like, you're gonna be okay, like, we're gonna make it through this. And that cultivated trust still, I think, is an anchor for us to this day. Of just, he's got me. And there were good days where it's like, hey, I cleaned the kitchen, or hey, I like did something, and I still was going to work and being successful there. And I'm very blessed that I found an incredible therapist that I still see to this day. And I will probably see them as long as I can. And, we kind of just slowly, like, I rebuilt myself, and we've kind of built a life together on that foundation of vulnerability and trust and humility. And because that's like the last thing you want to happen. Like, we waited all this time, there's all this buildup, I'm gonna be the perfect wife, and then we get here and you just fall apart. And it's like, this is not what I wanted to happen. But he stuck with me, and it's still very humbling to this day to realize, like, oh, like, I have these things that in my mind disqualify me, but he still thinks I'm worth it, and he still chooses me, and he still loves me more than probably I will ever understand and know. And we've stuck together.
Yeah. I mean, and I think that you guys had that, like, those years to invest in one another and to really know each other, so that then once you were married, you were able to already have that foundation in place when things were falling apart, you know? And, like, even though this, like, anxiety and the struggle that you had wasn't what you wanted, it sounds like it was kind of what you needed.
Yeah.
And James was finally able to give you that space to do that.
Yeah.
And that, I feel like, in my head, like, I imagine, obviously, like, anyone who's committing to you could do that, but if you didn't know them for very long and then got married quickly and all of that happened, like, I could see someone wanting to run away from that because they're like, oh, this isn't what I signed up for, you know?
But I mean, like, when you're in the marriage vows, you commit to sickness and health.
Yeah.
And so we don't usually anticipate the sickness ever happening. We just assume it's not going to, and especially not right away.
Yeah.
But you guys had that season to, I mean, draw closer together through crisis, really.
Yeah, we really did. And I mean, I realized it takes a really strong person to look at someone in their brokenness and be like, I'm not looking away from that. I'm actually going to be here with you in this pain, in this crisis. And you know what? How I feel and how I see you isn't changing.
Yeah. Like, he knew you outside of crisis and within crisis.
Yeah.
Looking back on all of this, on your past 3 years of marriage, on your past, 7 or 8 years of relationship?
8 years.
8 years of relationship. Is there anything you look back and think you would go and change that? Something that you regret or wish that had been done differently?
Yeah, I mean, part of me is like, yes, I would change all these things, but also it's like that process is invaluable to me. And, like, obviously, would I love to have not had a breakdown? Yes. But also, like, I am so self-aware now, and I know myself so well, and I understand more of the why, and, like, I wouldn't be here, like, who I am today without it. And, like, I can look back and be grateful. You know, part of me is like, well, part of me would love to have gotten married earlier. But then I look back and I'm like, actually, no. Like, I needed to go through the process I went through. And we have our marriage today because we took our time. Part of me wouldn't have spent so much stress on the wedding.
Yeah, for sure.
Like, James always was like, babe, we're just having a wedding for, like, he's like, not that I'm not excited, but you're the one that wants the wedding. I would marry you in a heartbeat in the courthouse. And part of me is like, man, why didn't we just do that? And it's like, oh, because we're told from a young age you're not married if you don't have a wedding. But
And you look great in a wedding dress.
And I looked so good in my wedding dress. But yeah, part of me is like, maybe I wouldn't have had a wedding if I went back and do it all over again. But also, like, again, I'm just, like, so grateful for the process. And, like, I know that, like, we haven't arrived and there's not necessarily a destination, but I'm pretty pleased with how it's all panned out so far. We've had a lot of highs and a lot of lows, but, like, I think that's what I heard the most after I got engaged. Everyone wants to tell you how hard marriage is, and I'm like, that sounds like something I want to commit to for the rest of my life. But literally, like, people would just be like, oh, it's just so hard, and I'm like, frick. Marriage for me has not been hard. Life has been hard. And marriage has helped support me through life. Now, I'm not saying if your marriage isn't easy, it's not right. Like, everyone's journey is different. I can't judge you based on, you know, whether your marriage is hard or not. But I would be hesitant to tell any newlywed that marriage is hard.
I would say, like, marriage is hard in the way that relationships are hard.
Yes.
Like, live in the same home as anybody and share resources and figure out how to delegate tasks.
Yes.
And, you know, figure out when to watch TV. Like, you know, compromise on what TV show to watch every night. Like,
Or what the hell we're having for dinner.
yes.
Good night.
Relationships are hard. It's not. And in that hardness, they're also great. Like,
Yeah.
I don't regret having friends or having a sister or a family. Like, it's all beautiful things, but just like I have to navigate differences in opinion with my brother, I have to navigate those things with my husband,
Right.
you know? So it's kind
Well,
of like,
and just like any relationship, you have to invest in it. You have to build. You have to spend time together. Like, it's just because you get married doesn't mean you automatically have a wonderful connection. Just because you live in the same household doesn't mean you automatically have a great relationship. Like, you do have to work at it, but it's not like a task. It's like a joyful journey.
yeah, for sure. Well, I would say, if you ever do go back in time, you should try out getting married at 18.
You know,
See what you think.
if we just met when I was 14,
You would have had the time to, like,
the time to
cultivate-
get married at 18.
Yeah. Try it out sometime.
That would be wild. I was a mess. And he was
14-year-old Kelly.
so kind and just stuck with me.
Oh, yeah.
And yep.
I feel too that, like, everybody looks back on their wedding and they're like, I mean, Ross and I have this joke at least. We're like, next time we get married, let's elope, you know?
Yes.
We're like, that was, I mean, but it's easy to say when you've had a wedding. Like, I think it was, like, we value that we got all our family and friends together to celebrate us, you know, and all that stuff. But it was like, but then looking back, you're like, oh, it was so stressful. There's all this stuff happening.
Yeah.
But at the end of the day, it's like, oh, but I got to do that thing
Yeah.
that people dream of or whatever.
Yeah.
But
It's true.
what would you say to others then who are considering waiting to get married or not waiting? What's your advice?
Yeah. I mean, I'd just say know your reasons, know yourself. Don't actually let shame, guilt, or any external thing actually guide you. You have to listen to your inner voice. And you know, like, you just know in your bones. Like, the day that we got engaged, it just felt like it was written into my life story. And the day we got married, it felt like it was always meant to be. And I can't explain why, really, but, like, you just really have to stick to your guns and do what you know is best for you. And if that's getting married at 18, awesome. And if it's waiting 4 years to get married, also awesome. Like, it's gonna be amazing no matter what you do, as long as you're following your own intuition, your own conscience, because no one else gets to live the life you do, and no one else knows what it's like to experience life the way you do. And that's why you just have to follow your heart, which is so cheesy, but I'm like that Celine Dion song, like, listen to your heart.
Yeah.
Like,
don't marry a douchebag.
don't marry a douche, marry an angel baby like me.
You're the angel baby, or you married an angel baby?
He's the angel, I'm the baby. I don't know. But yeah, just find someone you, like, I know everyone says, like, find someone you can't live without, but, like, find someone that you truly adore. That you, like, I adore every aspect of you, and I will see you in your fullness of good, bad, and ugly. But the good is really, really just outshines the ugly, and it's, you know, I adore you. Like, being married to someone you adore, you don't have to fight to respect them. You just naturally do. It's like, that was an interesting thing for me as a young 20-something, figuring out like, what is this like respect thing everyone talks about, like the leader of the household? It's like, actually, I don't have to fight for that. It's not hard. I naturally just respect you, and you respect me. It's mutual. All that to say, do make the decision that you're going to be happy with 20 years from now.
And 40 and 60.
And 40 and 60.
Yeah. So then here it is, the question that we have to ask.
The question we've all been waiting for.
The people are wanting to
The
know.
people want to know.
Kellyanne,
Yes.
what does the woman being waiting to marry mean to you? Who is she?
She's brave. She's strong. She follows her heart. She marches to the beat of her own drum. She'll listen to other people and what they have to say. But at the end of the day, she's making her own call because she's got to follow her own convictions. And you know, sometimes it sucks. But at the end of the day, you'll be happy. That's what it means to me.
I think that's amazing.
Thank you. Thank
And
you.
I think you're amazing, Kellyanne.
You are amazing,
Thank
Kelly.
you.
And you're amazing, Emma.
And you're amazing,
amazing,
Kelly.
Emma, and
Thank
you're amazing,
you.
Kelly.
Oh my gosh. And you're amazing,
and
woman
You're
being.
amazing, woman being.
And if you're an amazing woman being out there, then you're gonna want to follow us at
Yes.
Woman Being Podcast on Instagram. And also check out our website, womanbeingcommunity.com. If you loved getting to hear some of Kellyanne's story, some of her reasoning, if this is something that resonated with you, leave us a review on Apple Podcasts, give us a rating, and comment on our Instagram because we want to get to know you guys. We want to chat with you guys. And we love hearing your stories and the ways that you've been impacted by our stories and the stories that we bring onto this podcast. So we'd love to hear from you. It's a new
We
year.
made it through
new
It's
2020.
no
us.
longer 2020.
We made it through.
It's not
God.
that it's almost no longer than 2020. And we
Yes.
can all celebrate.
Take a deep breath.
And welcome 2021 into our lives.
And who knows if it'll be any
Absolutely.
better.
I mean, let's all make a pact to not do that thing of 2021 is gonna be my year. Like, let's just like slide in gracefully and be grateful we're here.
Be grateful we've made it
We
through such a
made
year
it.
as 2020.
You did it.
Such a time
You
as
done
this.
did it,
Yes.
done.
You done did it done.
Anyways, we could ramble on forever, but
We do actually ramble on forever.
that's why we have a podcast. But we'll catch you guys next week, and that's all, folks.